Hi, this is Yolanda Van Veen, and in this segment we're going to talk about how to properly space vegetable gardens. So when you set aside an area for a vegetable garden, it's such a joy and you can't wait to get those vegetables in because you know you're going to enjoy them all summer long. But how do you space them apart and how do you know? Well, it is a rule of thumb that I have found is to just read the packaging and to make sure and give the plant a lot of space if it's a large plant like corn, and just a little bit of space if it's a vine or a little plant like a sweet pea. If you have a plant like corn, you want to put them at least 3 feet apart because they make really big plants. And if you space them too closely, then they won't get enough sun and they won't mature correctly. And so the rule of thumb is plant them 3 feet by 3 feet. So in triangles at least, because they look better in groups too, and when they grow they'll do a little bit better. So make sure you can always set little squares out into your garden area and block it off by feet so you know where to plant them. That's an easy rule. So 3 feet in between the corn. And if you have a plant like peas, which are much smaller, they only need to be 3 inches apart. And they need something to grab onto because they're a vine. So just putting some string down and planting them 3 inches apart usually is good enough. A plant like spinach will make kind of a lettuce type head, and you don't want those to be too close because they'll kind of push themselves from each other. But plant those about 4 to 5 inches apart, and that way there's room for them to grow, and then they'll do really well. I found with onions too, only 1 to 2 feet apart is fine because they will develop lots of onions, but they're underneath the ground and they're like a bulb. They'll get crowded and they like to be crowded. So you can do those about 1 foot apart. With celery, a trick too is to start the seeds and then use like a milk carton or any kind of carton and put them over the seeds so as they grow, they'll stay straight up. And make sure that you have at least 1 foot apart from each other because they need some room. You don't want them to be pushing too closely. With tomatoes too, I always put them into tomato cages or make kind of a teepee so they can grow up that. So I always put them at least 2 to 3 feet apart because they do make quite large plants. The same with anything like a watermelon or a pumpkin. Make sure, because it is a vining plant that takes up a lot of space, they can always have a lot of vines in one area, but make sure they're at least 2 feet apart. And when in doubt, you can always move plants too as they get crowded, and overseed a bit too. So always plant 2 to 3 seeds where you want 1 plant to start because they don't always all make it. And then that way you can have a nice lush vegetable garden to enjoy all summer long.